we had some news, and then this morning happened, and then some more news joined the fray. And I'm going to start with that news first, because Bloomberg ran a headline. Oh, I guess this was late last night, actually. I think it's coming out of Japan. Here's the headline. Nintendo plans upgraded Switch console and major games for 2021.
Whoa.
Which, granted, I feel like we've probably said about 5 times on this podcast over the last couple of years.
At least.
Switch 2.
Yeah. But this sounds pretty definitive. This definitely sounds like by far the most firm version of this story that they've reported to date. Like, this basically says this is happening. They are planning it for next year. Not, last couple times this came around, it was like, they're thinking about it. Nobody's quite sure inside the company what it would look like or how they would roll it out, but this sounds pretty definitive.
And there's some talk in there about like potential specs for what that thing might look like, right?
The lead says Nintendo plans to debut an upgraded model of its Switch console next year, along with a lineup of new games, ceding 2020's holiday spotlight to Sony and Microsoft. Which, when you realize that we're like a week from September and Nintendo kind of doesn't have anything else on the docket for the rest of the year.
No.
There were those.
But here's the thing. If there was ever a holiday season to seed, wouldn't this be the one?
I mean, it's probably, they're not going to go toe-to-toe with these new boxes for sure.
And it's like right now it does feel like their first-party development has hit a point where like they must be reloading for something because they have not even really announced much beyond like, hey, Metroid Prime 4 still over here somewhere, hanging out. Yeah.
Mario Masters, maybe.
So
eventually.
That Breath of the Wild 2. You'll see that eventually.
Right. So, like, I have to assume Breath of the Wild or whatever that sequel ends up being called is a Switch 2 game at this point, right? Or it's something they roll out alongside a new refresh of the Switch. That's not
I can imagine that being cross console.
Oh, I'm sure. I have to imagine that this isn't, because this doesn't sound like a new console. It sounds like the platform, but it is a more powerful version of it.
The language
and Breath of the Wild 1 was even on the Wii U.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The language in the story says the specifications of the new machine have yet to be finalized, though the Kyoto-based company has looked into including more computing power and 4K high-definition graphics.
Okay, so inform me, because I don't know much about this. What is the current state of 4K ready screens that could possibly be portable?
I have to assume this means it would output in 4K potentially on TVs, but not.
Okay.
I would be shocked if it was more than like a 1080p screen on a new handheld.
Okay.
Is my guess of how they would approach that. Because there are a lot of ways that they can upscale like a 1080p image to 4K and make it look good on TV without actually running at 4K. Anyway, I have to assume, like, look at every version of the DS, right? Like, there were 2 to 3 versions of each DS, right? And they all ran the same games. Like, I can't imagine in any way this is a new Switch that somehow cuts off the old Switch. Like, games continue coming out for both. They run on both, right?
It's probably it's probably closer to like the PS4 Pro and the 1S.
I totally like what I'm getting at is like it's not like they're going to just suddenly say, hey, this Breath of the Wild sequel only runs on this new Switch. Like all the tens of millions of old Switches are shit out of luck or something like that.
I mean, I think if you're going to take anything away from this possibility, it's that they think the Switch has a long lifespan as a platform. Yeah. Like 4 years after the initial hardware launch and 2 years after the Lite. It's like, yeah, they know they have a library of games that will continue to sell well as long as they keep putting out their own stuff on there. They don't need to engage in the same fight that Microsoft and Sony are having right now because they've established their fiefdom. They know what they're doing. They know that they can stretch this out as long as they want, really.
They're still counting their Animal Crossing money. Like I feel like they're still proven like this year with new games that they're like, okay, there is still obviously this huge supply or this huge demand for this. And I'm sure COVID helped with that in a way, but like truly the sales figures for Animal Crossing are insane.
Isn't it
that alone?
It's the highest selling Switch game, right?
Yes.
I believe it is.
Mm-hmm.
And in a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah. And I mean, like the Switch, both in concept and in terms of the guts of it, it's basically a tablet with controllers on the sides, right?
Right.
Sure. That is what that thing is. And in that space, like the hardware is just constantly iterated on, like there are 8 generations of iPad that can all run the same game. You know what I mean? So like, I don't know if and when they would ever cut this product line off, right? Like they just continue to, for years to come, just kind of slowly upgrade it.
Any pie in the sky like stuff you would really want in a follow up to the Switch? Because the only thing I thought of right out the gate was like better battery life.
Yeah, that's a big one, obviously.
Support for like Bluetooth audio.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that one's tricky because there's a lot of bad latency in standard Bluetooth audio codecs. Like there are like custom ones you can use, but I don't know if Nintendo's like not a very forward-looking company in terms of tech. Unfortunately, so I don't know if they would adopt any of that stuff. But yes, that wireless headphones of some kind would be huge for me.
Yeah,
for sure. I don't know, like feature-wise, I feel like that thing's pretty great already. I can't think of a lot of actual features. But yeah, it's like Ben said. It's like better battery life and like better frame rates and better resolution. Just like better stuff.
No
like,
controller drift.
Yes, fixed fucking joysticks that don't.
Never again.
Yes.
I feel like my wishes for that platform and that console have less to do with like hardware upgrades and more like just like system feature, like game feature stuff. Like I really want them to keep building out that classic games library because right now it still feels very thin. I want their online stuff to just get better, just be better than it is. And it would be nice if by the time this thing comes out, they have figured out a few of those things. But as far as the hardware goes, 4K thing is nice and I will totally buy this. But like, I also imagine the number of people who are out there desperately looking for a 4K output Switch is not that high considering.
Yeah. I don't have a 4K TV. I mean, I know I've heard Jeff on multiple occasions say that the Switch does not look great on his 4K TV, the way that it upscales the image. So I guess
but it's not flawless.
You're totally right, though. Like that is not a mass market concern. That's not something that most people.
I wonder if they kind of go down the path of like if they have like kind of the split of like there will be the Switch 2, which is your 4K iteration on the basic Switch, and then like maybe another 2 years after that we get a new Switch Lite, which is like
100%,
way better battery and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's actually just the Switch.
Yeah,
they just put out the original Switch as the new Switch Lite.
I do hope they do a much better job than they have traditionally in supporting the previous version of the hardware, though, because like when you had the new 3DS come out, there almost immediately were games that ran like complete garbage on the old 3DS, and like that sucks ass. Like Hyrule Warriors was one of those where like it was like almost unplayable on the old hardware, and I hope they restrain themselves and like keep that installed base in mind better than they have in the past on some of that stuff. But like it makes you wonder if like their super thin release slate is because they're now holding most everything back for this.
I mean, I'm sure COVID definitely impacted that stuff as well. Like there was all those rumors about like the Mario anniversary stuff coming at the end of the year, and they haven't even like alluded to that stuff much.
That is the one wild card to me because that stuff is all based on an anniversary, wasn't it? Like
it's like this is
35th.
I think so.
Isn't Mario's, so like if that's around anniversary timing, that maybe needs to happen.
Yeah, and I mean that is a thing you could announce during a direct in September and say like it's coming in November and be fine.
You're totally right. Actually, I just forgot that they did exactly that with Paper Mario. Right, that was like what was that, like 6 weeks from announcement to release for that game or something like that?
And that's a hell of a game. So it leaves me hopeful.
What if
was it actually that short? Wow, that's wild.
Maybe 2 months at the outside, but it was very short. And I love when people do that. Like I just spare me these protracted marketing cycles. Just tell me about it and then give me it. Do you think
or they get hit by other people get hit by devastating leaks and it's just like, oh, this is what this studio is doing forever. Like NetherRealms, I feel like is one of those that is just like, oh well, here's the new round of NetherRealm leaks or Capcom or whatever.
Do you think that they could announce that Mario stuff and release it on the same day?
They could. I don't think they would.
You think they could full on Nintendo Direct, just like here's all this, there's remastered Mario 64, by the way, it's out now.
Because they did that with like Tetris 99.
They did that
with that Kirby game.
They do it on occasion. They just would never have. They've never done it with something that big and momentous before. But
I bet there's still at least a 6 week lead time on that, if not longer.
Yeah, there's nothing I love more than the simultaneous announced release in terms of like. Don't consider myself a hype beast by any means or whatever the fuck people say these days, but that is a fun way to get people excited. It's just like, hey, here's this insanely cool thing we made, and here it is right now.
It's fun because we don't really have like the monoculture anymore, but like that's the closest we get to like, oh my God, everyone's talking about this for the next 48 hours. It's nice.
Totally.